deep within the seemingly tranquil green mountains of southwestern Vermont, there is an enigma, a place where the wild beauty of the forest hides a string of baffling disappearances. It's an area that's earned a chilling nickname, the Bennington Triangle. And like its infamous oceanic counterpart, this stretch of wilderness is synonymous with people vanishing, almost as if into thin air. Between 1945 and 1950, at least 5 individuals walked into this landscape and were never seen alive again, or their fates took perplexing and disturbing turns. The woods hold their secrets close, leaving behind a legacy of fear, speculation, and a mystery that still puzzles us today. Just imagine this. A seasoned woodsman, someone who knows the forest like the back of his hand, vanishes without a single trace. A college student, out for a day hike, disappears in broad daylight, seen one moment, gone the next. A man on a bus, surrounded by fellow passengers, seemingly dematerializes between stops. And an 8-year-old boy, left alone for just a few moments, is swallowed by the silence of the trees. These aren't scenes ripped from a horror film. These are the chillingly real, unsolved cases of the Bennington Triangle. What dark force, what strange phenomenon could make people disappear so completely, leaving so few answers behind? So, what exactly is the Bennington Triangle? The area is centered around Glastonbury Mountain and includes several nearby towns like Bennington, Woodford, and Shaftesbury. We're talking dense forests, rugged terrain, and weather that can turn on you in an instant, a place where nature's beauty can quickly become formidable. But even before the cluster of disappearances that cemented its dark reputation, there were whispers, legends clinging to this land. Native American tribes, like the Abenaki, historically treated Glastonbury Mountain with caution, even fear. Legends speak of the mountain being cursed, a place where the 4 winds met in an eternal struggle, whipping up erratic weather and disorienting conditions. Some tales even mention a man-eating stone, an evil rock that would supposedly open up and swallow anyone unlucky enough to step on it. Now, while these are folklore, they paint a picture of a landscape long associated with the uncanny and the dangerous. Colonial settlers, too, reported strange lights, unusual sounds, and a general feeling of unease in these woods. The towns of Glastonbury and Somerset, once reasonably busy logging communities, had already started to decline by the late 19th century. By the time of the disappearances, they were well on their way to becoming ghost towns. Their dwindling populations and abandoned buildings only added to the desolate atmosphere of the region. It's against this backdrop of ancient warnings, encroaching wilderness, and decaying settlements that the most terrifying chapter of the Bennington Triangle began to unfold. The vanishings begin, midi rivers. The string of disappearances that would lock in the Bennington Triangle's notorious reputation kicked off. On November 12, 1945, 74-year-old Mitty Rivers was an experienced hunter and fishing guide, a man who knew the local woods intimately. He was leading a small hunting party near the Long Trail and Vermont Route 9 in an area called Bickford Hollow, about 4 miles west of Bennington. Accounts say Rivers got a bit ahead of his group. A friend saw him walking in a direction opposite to their camp around 4 p.m. He told his son-in-law he was just popping off a short distance and would be back for lunch. Then, he vanished. When he didn't return that evening, a search was organized. Despite his age, Rivers was a capable woodsman, and many initially figured he'd turn up, maybe a bit lost, but safe. But days turned into weeks. The search ramped up, eventually involving over 300 local volunteers and even U.S. Army soldiers sent from Fort Devens in Massachusetts. They combed the rugged terrain for 8 days, meticulously searching the area where Rivers was last seen. The only tiny piece of potential evidence ever found was a single rifle cartridge, discovered in a stream bed by a hiker the following spring, believed to have belonged to Rivers. No body, no further clues, Nothing to explain how a man so familiar with the wilderness could simply disappear from it. The forest had claimed its first victim in this strange sequence, leaving behind only questions and a growing sense of unease. The mystery deepens. Paula Weldon. Just over a year later, on December 1st, 1946, the Bennington Triangle would become the scene of its most famous and widely publicized disappearance, that of 18-year-old Paula Jean Weldon. Paula was a sophomore at Bennington College, an artistic and adventurous young woman. On that Sunday afternoon, she decided to go for a hike on a long trail, a popular route near the college. She told her roommate she was taking a study break and left her dorm, Dewey House, around 2:30 p.m. She was dressed in a distinctive bright red parka, jeans and light sneakers. Okay for an afternoon stroll, but not great for the dropping temperatures and snow that was forecast for that night. She packed no bag and took hardly any money, which suggests she planned to be back in a few hours. Paula hitched a ride from near the college to a spot on Route 9. Getting closer to the long trail entrance near Glastonbury Mountain, several people reported seeing her. A local contractor, Louis Knapp, gave her a ride part of the way. She was also seen by a group of hikers already on the trail. She asked them a few questions about how long the trail was. The last confirmed sighting put her on the Harbor Road section of the trail around 4 p.m., heading towards the Bowles Brook Valley as dusk started to settle. One witness, a lumberjack named Fred Godet, who lived along Harbor Road, saw her walk by while he was in the middle of an argument with his girlfriend. When Paula didn't return to her dorm that night and then missed her Monday classes, the alarm was raised. What followed was a massive search effort. Her father, a prominent engineer, rushed to Bennington, offering a $5,000 reward for information. The FBI was called in to help the local authorities. Hundreds of volunteers, students, and police scoured the long trail and the surrounding forests. They even used aircraft. But just like with Mitty Rivers, no trace of Paula Weldon was ever found. No clothing, no backpack, nothing. The baffling disappearance of a bright young woman in an area frequented by hikers in broad daylight sent shockwaves through Vermont and beyond. The initial investigation was handled so poorly, it was heavily criticized and directly led to the formation of the Vermont State Police 7 months later. Paula Weldon simply walked into the Green Mountains and never walked out, her case becoming a cornerstone of the Bennington Triangle legend, and even inspiring Shirley Jackson's novel, Hangsaman. A pattern emerges? James Tedford. The forest seemed to go quiet for a few years, but the Bennington area's unsettling reputation was far from over. On December 1st, 1949, exactly 3 years to the day after Paula Weldon vanished, another inexplicable disappearance occurred. This time, it was James E. Tedford. Tedford, a 68-year-old World War I veteran, lived at the Vermont Soldiers' Home in Bennington. He'd been visiting relatives in St. Albans, Vermont. His relatives walked him to the St. Albans bus station and saw him get on a bus heading south, towards Bennington. 14 passengers on that bus, plus the driver, later confirmed that Tedford was indeed on board. He was reportedly seen asleep in his seat as late as the last stop before Bennington. However, when the bus pulled into its final destination in Bennington, James Tedford was gone, vanished. His luggage was still on the overhead rack, and an open bus timetable lay on his empty seat. How could a man disappear from a moving bus, surrounded by other people, without anyone noticing? There were no unscheduled stops where he might have slipped off. Some reports suggest the bus driver later thought a man who looked like Tedford might have gotten off in the village of Brandon, about 70 miles north of Bennington, and that Brandon police investigated a report of a man fitting Tedford's description, acting queerly that same night. Still, the main story remains his disappearance from the bus itself. His absence wasn't even reported for a week, until the superintendent of the Soldiers' Home notified police on December 8th. Some sources mentioned Tedford was down about returning to Bennington and perhaps wasn't mentally well. Author Tony Jinks noted that the popular idea of him vanishing into thin air might be an exaggeration because of the gap between when his family last definitely saw him and when he was reported missing. Whatever the exact circumstances, no trace of James Tedford was ever found. His case added another layer of high strangeness to the growing Bennington Triangle phenomenon, suggesting that whatever force was at play wasn't just confined to the deep woods. The final year of fear, Paul Jepson and Frida Langer. The year 1950 would bring two more chilling disappearances, cementing the 5-year period of intense mystery in the Bennington Triangle. First, on October 12, 1950, 8-year-old Paul Jepson vanished. Paul, described as a special needs child, was with his mother. She was doing chores at the Bennington town dump, where the family kept some pigs. She left young Paul unattended in their pickup truck for about 30 minutes to an hour while she looked after the animals. When she returned to the truck around 4 p.m., Paul was gone. He was last seen wearing a bright red jacket, eerily similar to the one Paula Weldon had worn. An immediate search was launched. Bloodhounds were brought in and reportedly tracked Paul's scent from the truck along an adjacent road to a nearby intersection or highway, the same general area where Paula Weldon had disappeared 4 years earlier. Then, the trail just stopped, as if he'd simply been lifted away. One theory suggested a passing motorist might have picked him up as he tried to reach Glastonbury Mountain, a place his father said Paul had been obsessively talking about for days before he disappeared. Some darker, local whispers even speculated his parents were involved. A horrific theory involving the pigs they kept, but this was never backed up by any evidence. Heavy rainfall followed that evening, which could have wiped out any further traces. Despite extensive searches, young Paul Jepson was never found. Just 16 days later, on October 28, 1950, another experienced hiker, 53-year-old Frida Langer, met a baffling fate. She and her cousin, Herbert Elsner, were hiking near the Somerset Reservoir, not far from Glastonbury Mountain. Langer knew the area well. During their hike, around 1 p.m., Frida slipped and fell into a stream, soaking her clothes. She told Elsner she would take a shortcut back to their nearby family cabin, only 100 yards or so away, to change, and would rejoin him shortly. Herbert waited. When she didn't come back after a reasonable time, he went back to the cabin himself. Frida Langer wasn't there. She had never made it back. Another massive search operation was launched, involving up to 400 people, including local law enforcement, volunteers, the Massachusetts National Guard, and even aircraft from the Connecticut Coast Guard and U.S. Army. For weeks, they scoured the area, but found nothing. Then, 7 months later, on May 12, 1951, Frida Langer's body was discovered. Fishermen found her remains near the eastern branch of the Deerfield River, about 3.5 miles southeast of their campsite. Chillingly, it was in an area that had reportedly been searched, maybe not thoroughly, but searched multiple times in the preceding months. Because of how decomposed her body was, no definite cause of death could be determined. One investigator theorized she might have fallen into a deep pond after her initial slip, drowned, and her body was flushed out months later by a spring thaw. Frida Langer was the only one of the core 5 Bennington Triangle victims whose body was ever recovered, but her death offered few answers, only deepening the unsettling mystery of how she ended up where she did and why she wasn't found sooner. The naming of a phenomenon, Joseph Acitro. For decades, these unsettling disappearances were largely local tales of unexplained tragedy. While journalists in the Bennington region had noted the cluster of cases around 1950, wondering about connections and even referencing James Hilton's Lost Horizon, the area wasn't widely known for this. That changed in a big way thanks to Vermont author and folklorist Joseph A. Citro. Citro, a dedicated collector of New England's strange tales, legends, and paranormal happenings, saw a pattern in these vanishings. In 1992, during a public radio broadcast, and later made popular in his books like Shadow Child and Weird New England, Citro coined the term Bennington Triangle. He admitted he swiped the triangle part because of its mysterious ring, clearly thinking of the already infamous Bermuda Triangle. Citro's work connected these 5 core disappearances: Mitty Rivers, Paula Weldon, James Tedford, Paul Jepson, and Frida Langer, to the specific geographical area centered around Glastonbury Mountain. He also dug into the pre-existing folklore of the region, including Native American legends of the mountain being cursed, tales of strange lights, and unexplained sounds. Citro's writings helped to weave these separate threads into a cohesive, chilling story, transforming a series of local unsolved cases into a nationally recognized zone of high strangeness. He didn't just document the disappearances, but also other reported oddities: UFO sightings, Bigfoot-like creatures dubbed the Bennington Monster, and even theories of portals to other dimensions, or that man-eating stone on Glastonbury Mountain. Through his efforts, the Bennington Triangle became firmly planted in the landscape of American paranormal lore. Unraveling the enigma, theories explored. So, what really happened to these people? The Bennington Triangle's enduring mystery comes down to the almost complete lack of hard evidence. Over the decades, theories have swung from the rational and everyday to the deeply paranormal and out there. Rational explanations often point to the built-in dangers of the Vermont wilderness. The terrain around Glastonbury Mountain is rugged, the forests are dense, and the weather can change with brutal speed. Could these individuals have simply gotten lost, succumbed to exposure, or fallen victim to accidents in unmarked mine shafts or wells? Wild animal attacks, maybe by cougars or black bears, have also been thrown out there. But for many of these cases, these explanations just don't feel like enough. Mitty Rivers and Frida Langer knew their way around the outdoors. Extensive searches for most victims turned up no bodies, no clothing, no campsites, which is unusual if they'd merely gotten lost and died. The theory of a serial killer operating in the area between 1945 and 1950 has also been floated. The cluster of disappearances in a relatively short time frame is certainly suspicious. However, the victims varied so much in age and sex. An elderly man, a college student, another elderly man, a young boy, and a middle-aged woman. That doesn't fit the typical pattern of a serial predator, who usually has a specific type. And again, the lack of bodies or evidence of foul play in most cases makes this theory tough to prove. This is where the more speculative theories come into play, fueled by the area's folklore and the sheer head-scratching nature of the events. Joseph Citro and others have documented reports of strange lights in the sky, unidentified flying objects, and odd sounds coming from Glastonbury Mountain. Could alien abduction be a factor? Some paranormal enthusiasts believe the Bennington Triangle might be a window area, or a place where the veil between dimensions is unusually thin, possibly hiding a portal. Native American legends of a man-eating stone on the mountain, or the mountain itself being cursed, seem to echo these ideas. There are also tales of the Bennington Monster, a Bigfoot-like creature, with alleged sightings dating back to the 19th century, and even a story of a hunter found squeezed to death in 1943, surrounded by large footprints. While skeptics argue that these are simply a collection of unrelated tragedies, perhaps blown up by our human tendency to see patterns and our love for a good mystery, the Bennington Triangle continues to defy easy explanation. The sheer lack of closure, the bizarre circumstances like James Tedford vanishing from a bus, and the fact that only Frida Langer's body was ever found, and even that under peculiar circumstances, keeps the debate raging. So, what do you think happened in the Bennington Triangle? Was it just a perfect storm of natural hazards, the terrible work of a human predator, or something far stranger, something that our current understanding of reality just can't explain? Share your theories and thoughts in the comments below. And if these unsolved mysteries and chilling tales grab you, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and ring the notification bell so you don't miss our next journey into the unexplained. Those 5 years, between 1945 and 1950, left an indelible scar on the landscape of southwestern Vermont. 5 souls, Mitty Rivers, Paula Weldon, James Tedford, Paul Jepson, and Frida Langer became unwilling main characters in a mystery that has only deepened with time. Despite huge searches, official investigations, and decades of people guessing, no definitive answers have ever surfaced for most of them. The Bennington Triangle, whether it's a true paranormal vortex or just a string of tragic coincidences, remains officially unsolved. The forests around Glastonbury Mountain stand silent, guarding secrets they refuse to give up. The stories of the vanished have become woven into Vermont's folklore, a chilling reminder of the unknown that can lurk just beyond what we think is familiar. The legend of the Bennington Triangle endures, a testament to our human fascination with the inexplicable and a haunting question mark in the wild heart of New England. What truly happened to those who walked into the woods and never returned? Perhaps some mysteries are destined to remain just that,